Previously on Ex-Wives Undercover, Liars, Cheaters, and Love Cons, we met several women along Jill's journey with Todd Dean. And now that we're about at the halfway point of the story, let's do a quick recap of the women thus far in case it gets a little confusing. Don't forget that for this particular story, we will also be airing it on YouTube and showing photos, videos, and other evidence. First, there is the main character in our story. Her name is Jill, and she met Todd Dean in the fall of 2021. They dated and then were friends for about a year before her world imploded. Of course, this was after she got conned out of thousands and thousands of dollars. Then we met Sarah, Todd's assistant, who put her job on the line to try and help Jill once she was clued into his game. After that, we were introduced to Wendy, who was also dating Todd at the same time as Jill, and she also gave a substantial amount of money to Todd for his world-class mental health facility, Sanjara Wellness. In the last episode, we met Roxy, who never dated Todd, but her best friend of 35 years, Kit, did. This was during the summer of 2022, just a few months before Jill finally pulled the plug on her friendship with Todd. And by that fall, all of these women were slowly putting the puzzle pieces together, and boy, were they talking and sharing all of the information that they had with one another. And this brings us to our next guest, Karen, who was also the only woman at this time that had a court judgment against Todd Dean. And this is exactly how Roxy learned of Karen when she did her own undercover work that led her to this infamous court ruling. So, what is Karen's story and how is she connected to Todd Dean?
But he always made sure to put me in a position where I could see him working. He was always talking about working, telling me he was, they were people would hire him to be the CEO or the CFO or whatever. And he was so convincing. But at the time, I just didn't have a reason to doubt. It never occurred to me that somebody would fabricate this whole life.
Oh, yeah.
And really, all he was doing was getting money from people. He would ask me for money. He's like, oh, I got this deal, I got that deal. You know what, I need to do this. There was always a story that seemed reasonable. And so I gave it to him.
And would he stage it like, I'm going to pay you back in X amount of time, or I get paid on the end of the month, or
He would literally show me these contracts and say, I'm waiting for this chunk of money to come in. I'm waiting. And I would say, hey, can you pay me back? He's like, oh, I'm waiting. And he would send me screenshots of conversation. He always seemed to back it up.
Literally spent my last $20 and bought a loaf of bread and a gallon of milk today and some eggs. Yet I've got this $182 million deal that's looking very, very promising. So, fucking crazy shit.
Welcome to Ex-Wives Undercover.
Liars, cheaters, and love cons.
I'm Amber.
And I'm Athena.
First we told our story, and now we're sharing all of your craziest and most heart-wrenching stories of love gone wrong. Sometimes we laugh.
And sometimes we cry.
But more importantly,
we stand together. All right, girl. You ready to do this?
Let's do it.
The views, information, or opinions expressed on our show by our guests are solely the views of those individuals involved, and by no means represent absolute facts. Opinions expressed by the host and guests may change at any time. Our podcast and YouTube show may at times cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to suicide, abuse, violence. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to Jill's story, Kissing a Toad. Before there was Todd Dean from Nashville, Tennessee, and CEO of Sanjara Wellness, there was Todd Dean from Sun Valley, Idaho, a big-time businessman and angel investor. It was peak skiing season in February of 2017, And Karen, who has been a part-time resident in Sun Valley for the past 2 decades, was eager to hit the slopes.
I don't always ski by myself, but I did that particular day. I was kind of in my own head, and I was waiting for a chairlift. And as is often the case, if you're by yourself and there's somebody waiting, they'll say, hey, can I ride up with you? And I said, sure, ride up. And so we rode up on a chair together, started chit-chatting, and hey, you want to take a few runs? And that's not uncommon either. And
Right.
so
And you didn't think much of it?
No, I didn't think anything of it at all. In retrospect, it was like while we were skiing that he started one of his most favorite pastimes, which is taking photos and videos and selfies. And he said, I'll take a video of you and, I'll show it to you later. You can see how you ski, which is not a weird thing to do, but typically not a stranger.
Right.
But he seemed to be a good skier, and I was happy for the company. I was like, all right. So he said he had just moved from Seattle to Sun Valley. And he really made it seem like he grew up going there from Seattle, and which is not uncommon. A lot of people from Seattle have Sun Valley as sort of their vacation spot. He seemed to know the mountain. And then he just started throwing out numbers, and not numbers, but like names. I did angel vesting for this company and that company. Some of them I didn't know, but they certainly sound impressive. And I was the CEO of this company, a CEO of that company.
Yeah.
So many millions of dollars. And he just seemed to be a pretty high-end businessman. That's how he presented. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I had no reason to question it. Eventually, I think he asked if I was married, if I was there, was I there by myself? And I think I might have said at the time that, I wanted a little time alone kind of thing. So I probably gave it up right there. And he knew a little bit about me. You meet someone. What do you do? What does your husband do? Well, you give information. And like I said, in retrospect, I just put a big target on my head.
Right. I mean, he probably is looking for, does she have money? Does her husband have money? Casing you, essentially.
100%.
Karen and her new friend Todd decided to go to the lodge after skiing, and she couldn't help but notice that he knew everybody there. Quite the social butterfly.
We went into the lodge, and there was a lot of people. I remember it was really crowded that particular day, and I saw some people that I knew, and we're just sort of floating around. Now it's like après ski, and he just seemed to know everybody. I went up to use the bathroom, and I came down, and he was coming up, and I kind of didn't recognize him because we didn't have our helmets on. And he said, do you want to get a drink? And I said, sure. I can't remember if he went to get me a drink or if I ended up just going to get myself a drink, which again, I didn't think anything of, although it would come to be a pattern that he wouldn't pay for the drink or wouldn't pay for dinner, things like that. But whatever, we were just hanging out. And we sat at the bar at the Paya, which is classic Sun Valley, super casual. It wasn't even like we went out to dinner. We were just sitting at the bar, had a dinner and a beer or whatever. And the bill came, and he pulled out his credit card, and it was declined. And I was like, oh. And to me, I'm thinking, oh, shoot, that happens in Sun Valley. People get your card, or maybe you're traveling and they decline it. And he's a great liar, made up some story, whatever. I don't know what happened, And I was like, all right, no big deal. I pulled out my credit card. And again, I didn't think anything of it.
Of course
it just
not.
didn't
I don't
seem
think
that
anyone
weird.
would. Yeah, you're just like,
No.
shit happens. Okay.
I mean, I have on occasion pulled my card out, and for one reason or another, they're like, hey, do you have another card? And I'm like, oh. And then you call Amex or whatever, and they're like, oh, well, we didn't know where you were, or whatever. It just didn't seem that weird.
Minus that little faux pas at dinner, Karen and Todd began a friendship. And if you haven't noticed by now, he has a pattern. Lots of selfies and videos, tons of compliments, and an immediate feeling of connection.
I love to go to yoga, and there's a few classes that I love. And he was like, oh, I go to this class, you go into this class, this person's class. I said, yeah, I'm going to go tomorrow morning at whatever it was, 8 o'clock. He said, oh, I'm going to go to class. I'll meet you there, kind of thing. Again, super casual. And he clearly did have a yoga practice, but I'm thinking, oh, cool, guy does yoga. Lots of guys do yoga.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So we had that in common. And then that sort of became a pattern. Like, hey, you going to yoga later? Do you want to grab coffee after yoga? It seemed so normal and nice. And I was spending some time by myself because I was not in a great place in my life, and thinking, oh, maybe I should get a divorce. Maybe I'm not that happy. And I guess I let that on, and he just jumped into that open door. And what, that term now, it's like love bombing. It was compliment bombing and affection bombing, not in like a weird way. It was just complimentary. Oh, your yoga practice looks so good, or you look great in those leggings, like compliments. I sucked it up, honestly, because it's nice. He would have a dinner party and say, hey, I could use some help. You can like co-host it with me. There's going to be a lot of people there. You get to meet people. And he seemed to have connections with sort of a upper level in Sun Valley that I never really did. So I was happy to meet new people, thinking, well, maybe one day I'll live here. Again, I at that time, I thought it was serving me. I have to admit, when I first saw him, he was, charming and appealing, but his vibe was attracting in the true sense of the word, meaning he attracted people to him. And when I saw the people that he was inviting to his dinner party, I was like, I always wanted to meet that person. He lived in a house, which I later found out he didn't own. He rented. It was this beautiful house on the river that wasn't his. But
he said it was his?
I think eventually he told me that he rented it, but not at first.
Okay, so I hate to even go here, but it's a pattern. Did he start doing the selfies and the inappropriate type videos and selfies? Because all the other women are like, it happened very quick.
It started out sort of slowly. I did catch on pretty quickly that he was really obsessed with selfies. He was always taking pictures. And like, if he would see someone, even if he just met them, he would take a selfie. Again, retrospectively, he was documenting a life that didn't really exist. So if he met, I don't know, a celebrity in Sun Valley, let's say, I don't know if that ever happened, I'm using it as an example, he would take a selfie and make it seem like, oh yeah, I'm best friends with that person, that giant celebrity. And then he would send me pictures of like in the morning, like good morning. And to be honest, it wasn't that unusual at first, because sometimes people do that. I don't really do that, but it's like a thing. And this was like 6 years ago. And the whole selfie thing was sort of novel and new.
Yes.
There's a song about it. And I just thought maybe it was like a Seattle thing. I didn't know. But then the selfies started to get a little racier. And to be honest, I was sort of bored and kind of not feeling great about myself. And I kind of thought, all right, I'm game. I'll go. I'll play. He seemed to be like all the things that I was missing. He was a little bit like metro-y, and he did yoga, and he was, I don't know, he just seemed to be this sort of Renaissance man doing all the things that I wasn't used to seeing my partner do. And he just was kind of checking off a few boxes to the point where I was ignoring some of the red flags.
Back in 2017, before Sanjara Wellness ever existed, Todd told Karen that he was a life coach and therapist, among his many other credentials, and he even said he was writing a book, and it was called Why Women Are Single.
He had a lot of books out in his in the house he was renting. And there were a lot of them were self-help, psychotherapy types of things, and he claimed that he first of all, he claimed to be a professor. And then I found out he never even graduated college. And he claimed to be a life coach and a therapist, which is completely untrue. And he said that he would go see a therapist and then end up being their therapist. And little by little, every opportunity, if there was a tiny little crack in the door, he would like just blast it open and tell me how I'm being codependent. I must have been abused as a child. I must have been sexually abused. And I'm thinking, really? I must have been emotionally abused by my parents, and I'm codependent with this one, and I'm codependent with my children, and I do too much for my children. And he started and laying it on. And when you're not in a good place yourself, and someone has sort of created this foundation of trust, you start thinking maybe they're right. And my self-esteem was not good, and I started thinking, well, maybe it is me. Maybe I'm all these things. And he claimed to be a life coach and to have people that he helped. And even to the point where he said he was the therapist to the therapists.
We incorporate some fantastic technologies dealing with vibration, frequency, hypnotherapy, meditation, and many different aspects. And here's the beautiful thing. She's more grounded and she's more at peace than she's ever been in her life. So, again, if you have questions, you have struggles, you have issues, feel free to reach out to me on social media, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, even TikTok. If you want some good humor, that's what I'm talking about. You gotta lighten things up, just like in Stripes. Lighten up, Francis. So, again, I hope this is beneficial for you. I'm happy to have myself or my team dive in deeper to help you. And I can promise you that as you watch the future, Sanjara Wellness is going to have a greater impact on you and countless lives in our community. Because at the end of the day, we're one big family. Dysfunctional, I'll say that at best. But here's the thing. There's no question that I think we love each other. And at the end of the day, it's all about love. So with that, thank you, Bernardo. Thank you for your team. And I hope and pray that this had an impact on you. And I only wish we had more time. So with that, Todd Dean, checking out.
And he was writing this book. Actually, he said he was writing like 5 books, but he said he was writing this book called Why Women Are Single. And in fact, later that year, I'd cut my ties with him. He was initially, I don't think it's still on YouTube or Vimeo at one point. I should have like videoed them. He was, I think, invited to do like a TED Talk in Sun Valley, and that was going to be his TED Talk.
On the book.
And I remember going on Vimeo because someone told me they had seen it. And it was like his practice runs or whatever. And it was absolutely absurd. And it was yanked. And someone else did a TED Talk for him instead. He had a diagnosis for everyone. And a lot of us got the same diagnosis. Okay?
Right.
We're all alcoholics. If we have a drink, we're alcoholics. For the record, I'm not an alcoholic. If I would have a glass of wine or say, hey, where's the wine? You're an alcoholic. Answer was, I'm an alcoholic. If anything came up about even being sort of like prudish about something, about like something sexy prudish, he would say, you're a sex addict. He called us, and I've spoken to a lot of women, he diagnoses us all the same. I never encountered anybody like him before. I didn't know what was happening to me.
Right. And I'm assuming like you didn't now he didn't graduate college is what you say, but at the time you probably didn't have any inkling to go see if he graduated or was a therapist or was this big businessman that you thought you just took him at face value.
I remember Googling him. And again, it was 6 years ago. It seems like it was not very long ago, but people didn't jump online and Google everything. And I don't know that every little piece of information was as accessible in 2017. It was a little different. Maybe he said he never graduated, because I think I said, so where'd you go to college? Did you go to grad school? And I think at that point, maybe he said he didn't. I remember him telling me that he was like a founding member of an angel investing group in Seattle called, I don't know how to say it, it's like Keiritsu or something. And I did look it up, and it does exist. People did know him. I later found out that he was booted and that he took money. And when I went on his Facebook page, because that's what you did,
Right.
And there was pictures of them. It looked like he had the life of Riley. People he was presenting to me as his friends were so like upstanding. I remember one time in particular, I remember skiing that day and coming to a table where there was a guy sitting, and I think Todd knew him. And so we were chatting, and this guy seemed to be like way like upper level, like Sun Valley dude. Like there are some really high, I don't know how to say it without sounding like a pumpkin, but like super high wealth individuals out there. If I'm not mistaken, they were having a dinner, and they invited me, and Todd was there, and they invited Todd. So Todd and I went together, and this was maybe one of the most ridiculous houses I'd ever been to, like with a gate and like a crest on the gate.
Oh my God.
And
Wow.
I get there, and there are other people there that I know, really kind of upstanding citizens. And I'm thinking, wow, this is who he hangs out with? Like, that's impressive.
I feel like it's a natural thing to kind of want to align with someone who's so extroverted, so connected, so vibrant that everyone, you know what I mean? And it could be a good thing. It could just be a win-win. And it adds validity when people are powerful and wealthy and smart and successful.
Exactly.
You automatically give them trust. It's just kind of, as humans, what we do.
The people that I met at these dinner parties that I now know, and now we all know about him, they were super solid people, business people and entrepreneurs. They were sucked in too, but they just weren't really victimized the way someone like me was.
Because he wouldn't dare. He wouldn't dare. He wants to use them to give himself credibility, but
well,
he's going to...
I didn't realize that he was also using me to give him credibility in Sun Valley.
As Karen and Todd's friendship grew, she was a guest at his home on multiple occasions. And do you remember when I asked Jill in the first episode if she thought Todd dressed and lived like the wealthy man that he proclaimed to be? Well, Karen also got that same vibe, explaining to me that the furnishings didn't seem to fit a man of his status. In addition, she also got to meet Todd's roommate and couldn't help but notice how poorly he treated him.
He had a roommate who seemed to be like an odd sort of dude, but harmless, certainly. He was always very pleasant to me. But I would see him treating his supposed friend, horribly, like telling him to clean the grout on the floor. The floor, I remember, had these big terracotta tiles with big grout lines, and he would have him on his hands and knees, like cleaning the grout. And I think I might have known at that point that he didn't own the house, and the house had a big old copper range hood that was fabulously patinaed, and these old copper pans hanging that also had this amazing patina. And I remember him telling his friend he wanted to polish them all. And I said, you can't do that. They're not yours. And it takes years for a copper
To get that way.
hood to get that way, with like the green, and like if they didn't want it that way, they would have sealed it or they would have cleaned it themselves. It's not yours. You can't do that. And I remember coming in one day, and there was Jeff, like with not really, but the presentation was like with a toothbrush cleaning it,
Right.
Like Jeff never came skiing. Jeff never went out for dinner. Jeff was like his slave. And he was so mean to him. And Jeff had this little dog. I can't remember the name of the dog, but it's always like the ugliest. They call it like the ugliest dog. Can't remember the name of the dog, the kind of dog it is.
Like the Chinese crested, like the hairless
Yeah,
one?
yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah,
that
they're not
dog's
attractive.
name.
Oh, boy.
No, And Todd was so mean to that dog. He would say, "Get that fucking dog out of my house. I'm gonna fucking kill that dog." And I was like, at first I thought he was kidding. And then I realized he was not kidding. He was like evil. And I remember many times saying to Jeff, like, "Are you okay? Like, is something going on?" So this was maybe May, April. I mean, really, like as I started seeing things. But he was so mean to Jeff, like inhumanely, like Jeff was his slave.
Todd was ever the professional and made sure that Karen saw him as just that. He seemed to be legitimate, and then he asked her for money. She wasn't in a great place personally and actually thought that this might be a great opportunity for her to start making her own way, at least financially. She couldn't have been more wrong. And by the end of May, all the pieces were starting to come together, and she was pulling back but feared that she would never see a dime, continuing to text and entertain his attention as if nothing was wrong. Todd turned his sights on another Sun Valley woman, which she later found out about pretty quickly because it's a small town.
But he always made sure to put me in a position where I could see him working. He was always talking about working, telling me he was, they were people would hire him to be the CEO or the CFO or whatever. And he was so convincing. At the time, I just didn't have a reason to doubt. It never occurred to me that somebody would fabricate this whole life.
Oh, yeah.
And really, all he was doing was getting money from people.
Well, I'm glad you're home safely. It's good. I'm sure it feels good to be home. I like being home here anyway, so. Yeah, tough day. I had that fortune teller dude that I thought was actually going to come through. And then he actually talked to Ziad, who's a guy I did business with, and Ziad said that he didn't work there, which I don't work there. But he thought it was kind of a red flag for him, so he pulled back, which I get that. So I'm just praying. I got, a lot of pressure on Steve and asked a number of other people, but it is what it is. So, praying for a miracle. So, anyways, that's all I got. I'm gonna crash. And too bad you can't hear the river. So, that's all I got. Bye.
So when he sort of presented to me these like investment opportunities, again, I'm thinking, wow, he's got all these good connections and, not really being truthful about who was investing and who wasn't investing. And I'm like, well, if they're investing, I want to, like if I said to you, I got this great tip, there's this brand new company, it's called Apple. You should invest. I invested, Joe Schmo invested, be like, oh, I want to invest in Apple. I thought it was paving the way to my future. I didn't ask for documentation. I didn't know. He made it seem like, don't you trust me?
Well,
so when
he's
he asked
taking that time to establish a friendship and a connection and a trust level. He knows how long before he can go in for the kill.
I can't explain it, but he just always turned it around. Always, always, always. And in such a way that you believed him. I know after speaking to Jill and some of the other women that he did the same exact thing to them. And we're not stupid people, just vulnerable, just catching us at a moment or a period in our times where we're feeling a little raw or exposed or missing something. And he just dove in. So I remember being there in May and going to some lectures, talks, or whatever at this wellness festival. And he was taking care of someone's dog. And I remember him bringing the dog into the wellness festival. So when you bring a cute dog into a group, what happens? Everybody's like, "Oh my
Oh God, no.
He pulled the dog thing,
He pulled
right?
the dog
He
card.
pulled the dog card. So then he meets this woman. Again, I'm not going to say any names, but he meets this woman who was one of the founding members, I think, but very involved in the whole production of the wellness festival. And it was from that moment on that he had his sights on her.
Okay.
And so the minute I stopped giving him money, because he was always asking me, not always, but like he would ask me for money. He's like, "Oh, I got this deal, I got that deal. You know what? I need to do this." There was always a story that seemed reasonable, and so I gave it to him.
I don't know where I lost you. So, but if I give them money, then I think that stops that process, and I can stay and then continue to move forward with my. Anyway, so. And yes, there are some pretty phenomenal, really good things. I mean, I'm talking to Steve almost every day, and Fabrizio, and I mean, I can't even tell you all this incredible stuff that's going positive. So that's why it's such a dichotomy that I've been trying to. I literally took my last money today and bought both bread and look.
So either it was about a project he was working on, like a good opportunity, or how he didn't get paid for this or that or the other thing because he was sort of this like gig worker, this gig CEO worker, which I started to feel like that's really fucked up. Like, don't you have any money in the bank?
Right.
But some people don't have money in the bank, you know?
And would he stage it like, I'm going to pay you back in X amount of time, or I get paid on the end of the month, or I'm a,
He'll literally show me these contracts and say, "I'm waiting for this chunk of money to come in. I'm waiting." And I would say, "Hey, can you pay me back?" He's like, "Oh, I'm waiting." And he would send me screenshots of like conversation. Like, he always seemed to back it up.
And what kind of numbers?
Then he would send me a screenshot of his bank account on like negative and be like, "You know what? I really could use your help." And he would always make it seem like someone was screwing him over. So like, "Hey, can you help me out? Because I'm always helping people out. Like, can you help me out?" He didn't ask me for a massive amount of money, but over the, 2 months or whatever, it was a few $1,000s, $500 or whatever. And I remember the first few times thinking, this is not a good idea. I wasn't spending money I couldn't afford to lose. But then it got to be this sort of vicious cycle where, and this is what he does, he sets it up so that he asks you for some money to do for this or the other thing, whatever. And then he asks you for more money because if you don't give him that money, then the thing you gave him the money for in the first place isn't going to happen. So he's literally creating a cycle where you are putting good money after bad, but then you're kind of scared not to give him the money because you think, if I don't give him the next amount of money, then I'll never see the first amount of money. So you give it to him again, and you're like, all right, well, now I gave you this money and I gave you that money because you said you needed that money to get this payoff, and one would follow the other. And finally, I stopped putting my hand in my pocket. There was that transition period from like the end of May, which was the wellness festival, through that summer, where I knew that he was like literally like a lion hunting. I already knew. To be honest, I was scared of him cutting me off because I just wanted to get my money back. So I played along a little bit that summer, even though he was totally hanging out with her. Like, even if I was in town, like, oh, I guess we're not friends anymore, which was fine by me, but I just wanted to get my money back. I was really embarrassed that I had loaned him the money. I didn't tell people at first. And so I just kept my relationship with him seemingly on the up and up because all I wanted was to get my money back. Well, that never happened.
While Karen was trying to figure out what she was going to do to get her money back, Todd himself connected her to a woman from his past, his ex-girlfriend, Christy, and boy, did she get an earful. This was a pivotal moment in Karen's story.
I always knew about this girl, Christy, that he told me about. He lived with her for 2 years, and there were pictures on Facebook. Anyway, 4th of July, he tells me that Christy's coming to town for 4th of July. I'm like, oh, good. Can't wait to meet her. And she was kind of larger than life. She had totally physically opposite from me. She was shorter, and she had this massive, amazing head of blonde curly hair. Very sweet. But I really just wanted to talk to her. I just needed to know what was going on. One afternoon, I don't know what he was doing, but he left me and Christy alone in town. And I said, come on, Christy, let's go get a glass of wine. She spilled it. And she told me that he lives with her pretty much rent-free, that her boys hated him. They would go out to dinner and she would sneak the credit card under the table and make it look like he was paying, and more of those kind of things. And that was, if I didn't need anything, at least I got that one more, like we talk about red flags, that was a green flag for me. Like, all right, this is all I need to know. And I knew that I had a problem. And I knew that I had to somehow start turning things around. But I'm really grateful that he connected the two of us, because meeting her and her being open and honest enough with me was really important to me. She was the only validation I had. I was feeling very isolated. I was feeling very embarrassed, and I was doubting myself. When you're all by yourself, you feel like it must be me. So speaking to her was pivotal for me, and I'm grateful for her for it.
I'm curious, how come she was still associating with him, and why did she come visit him if she knew he was so bad?
So, yeah, good question, right? Because now, as we hear from more and more and more people, and I speak to more and more women, why do they continue to hang around? Why did Jill continue to hang around?
Yeah.
Why? We don't know, because he, maybe like me, I can speculate, maybe like me, she thought if she stayed in his good graces and they stayed friends, that maybe one day he would pay her back. But her involvement with him was years long. The reason I stayed friends with him was for one reason and one reason only. I wanted him to give me my money back. That was the only reason I even stayed civil with him.
You'd think that he would learn, because when we listened to Sarah and Wendy's episode, Sarah was the assistant, talking to Jill, kind of giving her little tidbits of knowledge. And then here we have Christy kind of giving you some. It's like, you would think he would stop putting these women together, because they don't want us women to talk. They want their secrets not to get out. So it's interesting that he just continues.
So the only thing I could think of now, and I've had a lot more time to reflect, this was years ago, and the benefit of so much information and the benefit of these women now giving me information and helping me to understand. I think when you are such a narcissist and literally a sociopath, I think you, first of all, you believe your own bullshit and you create this reality that you actually believe is reality. And I don't think, I think people like Todd, I'm sure he felt that he was just untouchable.
After meeting with Todd's ex-girlfriend, Christy, Karen knew that she had to warn other potential victims, including the new woman in his life, Penny, the organizer of the big wellness event from just a few months back.
I was intimidated by her. She was like such a queen, and I thought maybe it's me, even though Christy told me. It's weird how you start doubting your feelings. I didn't have the courage yet or the game plan to kind of publicly kind of go out and try to make a difference. So I did what I could do. I started talking to people, mutual friends, saying, he's no good. He owes me money. I was just dropping enough, like rat poison around. I just wanted to get people to open their eyes and to just doubt and to think, because I knew he was going to show his face to her. I knew it.
So let's just to make it clear. So she begins dating him that summer-ish of 2017. By November, she actually is the first one to make contact with you because she's hearing these rumblings around town
Rumors.
of kind of, yes, you're just stirring up shit. She wanted,
I was
according
trying.
to her.
So like I said, I was hoping that if I didn't go after her, or whatever you want to say it, if I didn't go on the offensive, that maybe he would tell her what was happening and maybe she would get him to pay me back. I had no idea that he couldn't pay me back. He didn't have anything to pay me back. I didn't know that.
So walk us through that first text message that when Penny reached out to you saying, hey, I'd rather just talk to you myself versus hearing what's going on.
So if I remember correctly, for several weeks prior to that, I did continue to have some text communication with Todd, and I started getting a little bit of validation from people in town, and I said, you know what, Todd, people are starting to talk. This town is going to chew you up and spit you out. Pay me back. Just do the right thing. Todd and Penny were already involved that summer. November, she contacted me and said, hey, listen, I'd like to talk to you about these rumors, and they seem to all be coming from you. Like she was taking the offensive towards me. And I didn't care. I was just happy. I wanted to get her on the phone. And so we talked, and she texted me back and said, basically, thank you, but I'm good. I know my heart. I have my eyes wide open. I trust him. I believe in him. I think he'll pay back. And I was like, oh my God. Oh, like, are you kidding? So I was all alone again. Not only that, but she was like firmly on his side.
They're in that love bombing stage, so she's just not buying it. And what I will add is that I did go look into some court documents, and what you didn't know at the time was just 1 month prior, Penny and Todd created an LLC together, so she was already in it to win it.
So her defense mechanism was, Karen, you're wrong. He's going to pay you back. I believe in him. Little did I know she believed in him so much to create a legal partnership with him.
Within just a few months of knowing him.
Yeah. For a long time, there was not a lot of communication. What I saw on Facebook was a pretty public romance, and I just watched it, and I'm thinking, oh my God, like this is going to blow up. Maybe early spring, late winter. I start hearing that they broke up, and I don't remember exactly what that timing is, but it was sometime around right after that New Year. And I believe she contacted me again with singing a very different tune. Now she's pissed. She asked for my help to try to get him to meet me so she could serve him. And I was like, anything you want me to do, I'll do. I'll sit in Starbucks. I'll wait for him to show up because he always went to Starbucks. And so we went back and forth. And by that point, she knew he was a monster. And she texted me. I have text messages from her. And I did feel badly for her because she had wasted so much time. And I knew she had to be deep in at this point. We're on very good terms now. She knows how I feel. She knows, I think now she knows that I really did try to warn her, but I also get it. Mm-hmm. I mean, and now there's so many women that fell for him for that line. He's a pro. He's good. Nobody knows how he does what he does, but he does. So my heart went out to her. I still wanted to strangle her, like, oh, I wish you had just listened to me. I'm glad she got away from him. I'm glad he didn't get into her life any deeper with her children, with her other personal businesses. Maybe if those months before, if she had never heard me say what I said, and it was a phone conversation, I laid it on the line with her, maybe she would have stayed longer. Maybe this just sort of created a little bit of a warning system in her head where she finally saw it. So for whatever it's worth, I'm glad I spoke to her those months ago. I wish she had listened right away, but I hope it helped. I hope it helped her get out as quickly as she could get out. I know that she sued him trying to get out of that LLC. I don't know ultimately what happened, other than that he got Sanjara, as we know. I think that he wasn't allowed to use her name anymore, which I guess is a win for her, so she could sort of extract herself out of that. But he got Sanjara, and once he got Sanjara, he had this concept that he could peddle around. And that is what sort of catapulted him into this new phase, a new level, because now he had this whole concept. And who doesn't want to be part of a wellness facility? Like, that's so, admirable,
Yeah.
So he got that from her, and I'm sorry for her, but it's really pivotal because he took that and ran to Nashville with it.
So what happened in the lawsuit between Penny and Todd Dean regarding Sanjara Wellness? Well, stay tuned because we'll break down the court documents in a future episode. Now back to the story. Karen's mind was made up. She was going to sue Todd Dean to get her money back.
And then I just started really feeling like shit. Because now he's with her, and he seems to be living the life of Riley. This was before, it blew up in her face. And she's not convincing him to give me the money. And she's with him knowing that he owes me this money. And so I really felt like shit, and it was affecting my life. And I sought professional help, like an actual therapist who worked with me. And I can say she convinced me, but she encouraged me. She would say to me, what's going to make you feel better? What's going to help you right the ship? And what it boiled down to was I had to sue him. Like, what's going to make you feel good? I said, I really want to tar and feather him like the old days. And then she
What's
said,
the second best?
The second best was go after him. But with that decision came the decision to sort of own up to what I did. Okay, so once I'm suing him and it's going to be public information, I had to tell my husband, I had to tell my children. And frankly, I didn't really want to go into not even nearly as many ins and outs as I just did. But the bottom line was I became friendly with someone who scammed me. And the most important part that I wanted my family, my children, and my friends, the people that loved and respected me, what I wanted them to see and understand was that I went after him. I said, you fucked with the wrong girl. And I went to a lawyer, and that was money I was willing to spend. And stupidly, he signed a promissory note, which meant legally he admitted to owing me the money. He paid me a few times. God knows where he got that money from. And then he defaulted on the promissory note. So now I had a choice to either let it go or file a judgment against him. And so I made him a couple of different offers. At that point, I didn't know that he was going to steamroll through Nashville. I didn't know that he was literally a criminal. I thought he was just some stupid ass grifter, like loser dude. That's what I thought. I didn't realize that that was just the tip of the iceberg. And I remember making him some offer, like, just give me this lump sum and we're done. He had paid me back a few $1,000s in monthly installments. And then he stopped. And I said, you know what? You want to just be done with me? Just give me this amount and we're done. Or I'm going to let the default roll, and the judgment's going to be filed, and you will now be in default of this. And that's going to be, I guess, public record or whatever it's called. And he didn't pay me. And my lawyer said, what do you want to do? Because it's going to cost you X amount more to have it filed. And I said, fuck yeah, file it. So the judgment was filed in the state of Idaho. And then it's like a family practice. And my lawyer turned it over to his brother's practice, and they agreed to take it and sort of follow him, the situation, so that if he ever had any property, they could file the lien against it. And they tracked him, and I would keep in touch with them, and they would keep in touch with me. And like, he's in Arizona, he's in Santa Barbara, because he had a whole video about his property in Santa Barbara. And they said, well, we're going to have to file the judgment in California, and it's going to require this, that, and the other thing. Blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, the way the promissory note was written was that the interest and the penalties compounded like crazy, to the point where now on paper he owes me way more than I ever gave him. Such a stupid idiot. But
when did you have him sign that promissory note? Like when you were trying to get the money back, or before you even gave the money? Did you make him sign it?
No, when I gave him the money, I thought he was just going to pay me back. And when he was with this other woman, this upstanding, prominent citizen, I thought, oh, this is it. She's going to just tell him to give, or maybe she's going to give him the money to give me, because I started, tweeting a little bit in town. Like, you know what? Todd Dean's a real dick, and he didn't like that one bit.
Karen, I'm not interested in playing games. You know where I'm at in life. I have a very, very good reputation. Not to say that you have not made mistakes and I haven't made mistakes, but I'm just curious as to who the people are, because this is a very, very small town, and I want to know who's saying what, just so I know to be careful or to not be around those people. So I'm not going to say or do anything, but as my friend, I'm asking you and inviting you to share that with me. And so I don't think it's too much to ask. I'm very careful about who I associate with from integrity and ethics standpoint. You're just making yourself look bad. And so, you're welcome to gossip all you want, which I know you're doing. And I'm just telling you, it's not making me look bad. I'm not worried about it. I know my reputation. I know the people I associate with. I wish you well. I will take care of my financial matters with you as soon as possible, and that will be resolved as I've said before. And so that's all I got. And I don't talk about your issues. I don't gossip about you. So, that's all I got.
I started just like dropping little, like he was dropping love bombs, I was dropping like shit bombs.
Truth bombs. Yeah.
And but she didn't at all help me get any money. And then I sued him, and he signed. So I don't know what prompted him to sign that note, but I'm glad he did. He signed it. I think
he'll never do it again, I'm sure.
No. So it wasn't while I was loaning him the money. I had kept track of it all. And I don't know, maybe he thought that it was going to make him seem honest or legitimate or something. Anyway, the promissory note is still there. In fact, I spoke to my lawyer today, and he said, the way the note is written in the state of Idaho, if you incur additional expenses trying to do whatever, that the judgment can be amended to reflect these additional expenses. So it doesn't negate the original judgment, but my lawyer is in the process of amending the judgment to reflect an even higher amount.
So what are we at now, as it's been 6 years later?
I don't even know
what it's up to.
Tens of thousands of dollars, probably 10 times more than I ever gave him. I don't know what the new amount's going to be.
Great investment.
Most of it's going to go to the lawyers, because, to be honest,
right.
But that money is so long gone. It would be great if somebody handed me $100. I'd be happy. But let alone a few $1,000s. But, the lawyers have to be paid, and
But good for you for sticking to your guns. You found your balls. He's not going to get away.
In retrospect, this whole situation might have been one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I have learned, not that I didn't have boundaries, but like that word now is so much more meaningful to me. I'm not afraid of saying no to people. So in order to get that judgment filed, or I don't remember exactly how it works, but like they had to publish it in the local paper like 4 times or something. I don't know. And so I had to agree. And anyone reading the miscellaneous or whatever little section of the Idaho Mountain Express was going to see my name. And I got plenty of phone calls, and I said, yeah, loaned him money. He didn't pay me back. Signed a promissory note, and he defaulted. And I thought I was going to walk around town with this scarlet letter because he was with this other woman who was this sort of like prominent person. But instead, I was getting text messages from people like that she knew saying, oh my God, thank God you went after him. This guy is such an asshole. We need him to get him out of town. He's like spoiling the stew. And then once it was all filed and it was legal, and he, like I said, he would jump in front of it. He would meet someone online or in town or whatever. And he would say, oh, there's this woman. She, like, I was a thorn in his side. And, you know, I owe her money and she's crazy. And they would find me on Facebook or whatever and reach out to me. And I would say, well, it's up to you. Who do you want to believe? I said, I'll open up my Facebook page for you. You can see who I am. You can see my life. You tell me. If you give him a dime, you're an idiot. And I'll be the first one to say, I told you so. But I mean, I could go into my Facebook messages. I lost track of how many women found me because of that note, to the point where I can't say I don't care about the money. Like I said, it'd be nice to get the money. I don't care about the money. I went from feeling so shitty about myself to feeling like, wow, I just saved somebody from him. I just saved another person from him. This was before Jill, before Roxy, dozens and dozens of women. And that's how Jill and Roxy found me.
Right. I know. And the thing is like, it just takes that one person to say, absolutely fucking not. They want and prey on the women that are going to keep their mouths shut, who are going to comply and just wither away and not say anything. But then the minute one person says no, then the next person feels more empowered, and then the next one, and then you have a group, and now look where we're at. We're all telling this story.
Warriors.
Protecting. Yes, exactly.
I mean, even just people who are in touch, forget like me and Roxy and Jill, we're like, you know, there's a network probably of like people who actually are in touch of probably 15 women and a couple of guys, because he stepped into places he shouldn't have been. He's looking for vulnerable people. Where does he go? He goes to the AA meetings in Sun Valley. That's disgusting. That's like the person that puts a GoFundMe page on Facebook and pretends to have cancer. He went to the AA meetings pretending to be an alcoholic and found victims there.
It's disgusting.
But it was because he, in a lame attempt to get in front of the train, that he would throw my name out there, that Roxy actually was the one that called me first. And she doesn't even have any interaction with him. It was really, she was kind of fighting for her friend. And then Jill called me.
Were they the first ones to tell you about Sanjara, or had you heard little rumblings of it prior to that?
Every once in a while, I would get a message or text or whatever from someone who would say, hey, I heard Todd Dean did this, that, or the other thing, or check out YouTube or something. And he would have this video of Sanjara in Santa Barbara. It really wasn't in Santa Barbara. It was like 2 hours away from Santa Barbara. And, you know, I tried to keep my 2 cents. I blocked him, he blocked me, but I had friends that he didn't know. I'd be like, hey, can I go on your Facebook for a sec, you know?
Yeah, right.
So I would kind of see what he was doing. So I knew that this Sanjara thing was happening, and I knew there was a Sanjara Facebook page. So I knew that it wasn't a real thing. I knew he was never opening up a wellness institute. And so I knew that this was just sort of his front, you know, he was just presenting it. And he did. There were videos, even to this day, I think there's videos on YouTube, Vimeo, of him having these meetings where he's presenting to investors.
Mm-hmm. I've seen them.
They look so legit, right? He looks super legit.
Yeah.
He's got a good game. He's a pro. That's what I said to my friends that would like you got taken, like you? And I said, all I can tell you is, guy's a pro.
Yeah, I know.
He's like Dateline NBC. I didn't really know that he was full-time devoting his time to finding women and reeling them in and getting money. That was what he did for a living, day in and day out. He doesn't work for a living. He doesn't earn a living. I don't know. Maybe at some point he might have mowed a lawn or painted some. I don't know. Maybe he would have just to get cash. But his job, his career is to find women online, maybe in person. I don't know. I met him in person, and hook them and get them to give him money. And I know many women that did just that. People who never even met him in real life.
Needless to say, Karen is not Todd's favorite person. In fact, at one point, he told her that she was a relentless bitch. And she simply said thank you with a smile on her face. At this point, she's lost count of all the women over the years that have contacted her once they found out about the money that he owed her. And that is exactly how she became acquainted with Jill, Roxy, and all of the women in our story. At the time of this podcast airing, Karen is currently working on getting her judgment against Todd filed in the state of Kentucky and a lien placed on his Sanjara Wellness property there. Well, that was fun to go back to 2017, but in the next episode, we're going to fast forward to the fall of 2022 when Jill finally saw Todd for who he really is and joined forces with Roxy and the other women to uncover his web of lies.
And once again, if you like what you're hearing, please leave us a 5-star review and make sure to join our private Facebook group for even more juicy info. You can also find us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And of course, you can always visit our site at www.exwivesundercover.com.